We all know that fats are a critical element in your food storage, but how long will they really last? Hi, I'm Kylene and I'm the Provident Prepper. Today we are going to talk all about fats and how fats should be stored in your food storage, along with how long they will really last.
Mom, why does my peanut butter smell like spray paint?
There are three main things that will make fats go rancid. One is water. An example of that is butter. There's water in butter, and that's one of the reasons why butter will actually go bad faster than a lot of other fats. The second one is oxygen. So I can store in an original package, I can store this oil much longer than once it is opened and exposed to the oxygen, because then that process starts to take place and that reaction occurs and it starts to go rancid. Is any type of contamination. So if I scoop out some of my coconut oil with a spoon that is dirty and put bacteria or different little bugs in here, that will cause it to go rancid more quickly also. So we want to be really careful with our fats. For the longest shelf life for fats, you need three components: cool, dry, and dark. The cooler the temperature, the longer they will last, because it slows down that chemical reaction. Direct sunlight or light will also degrade the food, so we will really want to keep them stored out of light. Now I have a really interesting thing to show you here. This bottle was purchased in January of 2009. It is now February of 2021, which means bottle is 12 years old. It has not gone rancid yet. This one is from 2011 and it's still good also. Now it's really interesting because you would not normally expect this to be the case. Normally 3 to 5 years tops and your oil is gone. But the temperature in our storage room is really cool. And so that it's been in ideal conditions, and these have not gone rancid, which I am very grateful for. One of the reasons why these are in our storage so long is because I used to use this type of oil, but now we pretty much use avocado oil, coconut oil, and olive oil. And so they just kind of sit there because we're not using them. One of the other things that is interesting to note, because I have had oil go bad, the name brand tends to stay good longer than the store brand. And I'm not sure that it has anything to do with the oil. I think it's the storage container. You might not be able to tell by looking at this, but this is much thinner plastic. The quality is just nowhere near as good as the name brand. And that might not always be the case. You'll have some store brands that do have higher quality containers, but look for that when you are selecting an oil to store. Let's talk about the groups of fats according to their shelf life. I can store butter in my freezer for well over a year and it's just fine. I like to buy it like this and stick it in there and then take it out one package at a time and put it in my refrigerator. It'll stay good in the refrigerator for several months as long as it's not contaminated. And in the freezer, officially it's a year, but quite frankly, I've had butter in there for a couple years and it's been just fine. Mayonnaise will go bad quickly because of the different ingredients that's in it, but also the storage container. This container is not meant for long-term storage, and so it's one that I would give only about 3 years. And you can have some time past the date as long as you store it cool. And then peanut butter is a favorite at our family, and we actually store lots of peanut butter, but we rotate through it because peanut butter will go rancid, as my daughter discovered.
Mom, why does my peanut butter smell like spray paint?
The best fats for long-term storage are actually those that stay solid at room temperature. Coconut oil is an oil that I love, and so far I have never had this go rancid. Now you'll hear a lot of preppers say that shortening you can store indefinitely, that pretty much forever it will last. Well, in my personal food storage, that's not true. And my storage conditions are optimal. But about a year ago, and I feel bad, I should have taken pictures. I was checking on some of my preps because I quite frankly don't ever use this in my cooking. And so I was checking the shortening, and not only had it gone rancid and had a bad smell, but it had actually leaked through the container. So the container had degraded to such a point that it was all really oily looking, and there was some oil actually underneath it. So I was really disappointed. I personally would not store this in my long-term storage if it's a survival kind of thing, unless you use it all the time. If you're using it and you rotate through it, great, that's exactly what you should store. But this container is actually a better container for long-term storage. Now, this is cheese and this is butter. This is supposed to have a 25 to 30 year shelf life. And I'm not sure that I'm overly happy with it. When I tasted it, this is probably 15 years old or so now. But when we tasted it, it tasted a little bit like the can. And maybe I'm spoiled and I just like fresh butter, but that is what we found. Now, I know that some people are canning butter at home, and I would highly discourage that practice just because the extension agencies and the studies that they have done have shown that it can be dangerous. So that is something that I avoid altogether, because I'm really concerned that when my family needs this food storage the most, I don't want to make them sick and not have medical care available to help take care of them. So for the very longest shelf life, you're going to want to store fats that are solid at room temperature. I would take coconut oil over the shortening, one, because of the container. And you can choose to repackage this, but the problem with repackaging it is then you expose it to different bugs and things, and that is another thing that can make something go rancid quickly. So right now we know that it's fairly safe in this container, but that container is not going to last a long time. This, however, will last a really long time. And the canned is much more expensive. I don't rotate through it, but if you're just looking at a survival food supply, this is definitely something you might want to consider. I talked a little bit about the importance of containers when it came to the shortening, but let's just really delve into the container issue a little bit more. This one was a name brand, and so it had a better container. This is a spray, right? The canola oil would have a similar shelf life to the shelf life that's in here, 3 to 5 years or longer if it's stored correctly. But you are limited a little bit by this can, and I have not had any of these long enough to go bad because I only use them periodically and I don't store a lot. But this glass bottle is the ideal storage container. Now, it's going to be much more expensive to purchase your oils in a glass jar, and so I tend to buy a lot of the olive oil that's in a plastic bottle and rotate through it, but the glass is ideal. You would still need to keep it cool, right, and out of direct sun. Part of the reason why this bottle is tinted is to help protect it from light. And in the event of an earthquake, you could definitely lose your stored oils. But just as a container comparison, this glass truly is an ideal way to significantly extend the shelf life of the oil that's inside that bottle. Now let's just look at how much fat you might want to store for a year's supply for one person. Now we're talking basic survival rations. We're not talking about you being able to fry anything or be extravagant, but just how much you really need within a year period of time. There's a study that was done by Brigham Young University that suggests that you have 13 pounds of fat. Now, that would be, these are each 3 quarts, so that 13 pounds of fat is just a little bit over 1.5 gallons, which is about what these are, because these are 3 quarts each. Now, I bake a lot. I cook most of our meals from scratch, and I can tell you that I use significantly more than this amount of oil per person in our family. I think that it would be a better idea to store 3 of these per person for 1 year. Okay, let's wrap this up. Fats are an incredibly important part of your food storage program. You should have at least 13 pounds, which is a little bit over 1.5 gallons per person for a 1 year supply. Fats need to be rotated because they go rancid in storage fairly quickly. If you store them at a really cool, dry, dark location, they will last significantly longer. However, if you live in an area like Arizona, they're not going to be good for very long. You might get a year or two before it goes rancid on the shelf. Rotation isn't hard. You just make sure that when you purchase your new supply, you use up your old supply first. And now for the question of the day. What experience do you have with things going rancid in your food storage? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.